Hello everyone, my name is Jim Rasmussen and I want to welcome all of you for being with us today. And good afternoon, good evening, wherever your time zone might be. The Area Vice President for Sales for the Americas at Upside Learning, and just wanted to do before we get into the actual webinar. So certainly we want to thank everyone for attending the Responsive eLearning Development Challenges and Considerations webinar. And before we get into particular details, a couple of housekeeping items. You will be recording of the webinar via email. Polls lined up for you as well during the course of the webinar, so please do participate. And lastly, feel free to ask any questions from our experts using the chat facility. Okay. Now, just a bit about our company, Upside Learning. We've been around for 10 years, and we've been helping organizations of all different sizes and types to improve through better learning, with our head offices headquartered in India, as you can see. We serve clients based in the US, UK, as well as Australia, Middle East, North Africa, and other countries. And we have a wide range of innovative learning solutions that include, of course, Upside LMS, our multi-award-winning learning management system, Upside to Go, our mobile performance support platform, and custom learning solutions for desktops, tablets, and smartphones. Now, we've got a wide range of awards that we've been recognized for that include, as you can see, Brandon Hall, trainingindustry.com, Deloitte, CLO, Apex, Red Herring, and we most recently won an award for Best eLearning Team of the Year for 2013 by eLearning Age Awards. Very, very proud of that. A lot of hard work and a lot of great work that went into that. All right, then, let's get into it. It's, of course, I'm going to introduce the speakers for today. As you've met me, Area Vice President of Sales for the Americas, and I've been in the learning management industry for close to 20 years now, performance management, and I've been very involved in helping organizations grow and use solutions such as Upside provides to accelerate their growth and their performance. And let me quickly allow Amit Gautam to introduce himself.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Amit Gautam, and I work with Jim in North American and America market. I oversee sales in that region. I also oversee sales for India and the Middle East as a role. And apart from that, I oversee and manage all our development implementation for both our LMS platform and the mobile learning platform, Upside to Go. So it's kind of a brief role about myself. And I'm one of the promoters of the company. What I'll do is I'll hand it back to Jim for the session start. So over to you, Jim.
Great. Thank you, Amit. So let's get started here. Let's get started with a poll. You just quickly give some thought to how many devices do you use in a particular day? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, of course, what operating systems do your devices use? Meaning iOS, Android, of course, as you can see there, Windows, BlackBerry, or other. We'll leave that open for a little bit for you to respond. Okay, see the results coming in. We'll give that just a little bit more time, another 30 seconds. Okay. Well, it's not surprising. We're seeing at 0% just one device, and then as we get into the multiple devices, we got 14% that use two, and 61%, very strong majority, that are using at least 3 devices in a particular day. And this is consistent with certainly with our experience in talking with clients out there and how their people are utilizing devices and whatnot. So thank you for that. So let's move forward from there. So the agenda for today, as you can see, we're going to cover the multi-device world. You know, what does the landscape look like out there in terms of what we're experiencing in our interactions?
Jim, sorry to interrupt you. The second poll is in progress right now.
I'm sorry?
The second poll is in progress right now, and once that is closed, we can then proceed.
Forgive me. Okay.
And we have the result of the second poll with us in terms of which OS do the devices run. And iOS still holds a big proportion, 75% of the audience devices, which is, I think, not surprising, and it's a big number. An iPad, iPhone still kind of rule the roost in that sense. But I think what is also coming out, if you look at this in the context of devices being used, is that people have more than one device and possibly more than one OS or platform which they're using on those devices. So this actually would form a big part of the second part of the webinar when we are looking at the real challenges we would have to consider when we are building responsive e-learning. So yeah, I think, Jim, we have the polls closed now. You need to share your screen back so that we can start from, yes, thank you.
Sure, thank you, Amit. And great point. Those results were very much consistent with, again, our experience in the dialogues that we have with companies out there on a daily basis. In terms of the usage, we're still seeing a preponderance of iOS, but certainly the multi-platform is definitely a reality as well. So we still have that going on. So as you can see, we started through the multi-device world. What does the landscape look like out there? What are we seeing? What are we hearing? And obviously sharing that with you today. And then why is that pushing the need for responsive e-learning? Why are we seeing more demand for that as a result? What is responsive e-learning? What does it really mean? What does it really do? Why is that important? Why is that relevant? And then finally, of course, the key challenges and key considerations as well when you're thinking about responsive e-learning. Okay. So the multi-device world as we see it, of course, the interesting thing is that the reality is that we live in very much a multi-device world. A lot of what we're seeing is in terms of how folks are interacting with that is there's certainly a lot still going on through the desktop itself, but secondarily and growing very strong is the use certainly of iPads, iPhones, of course BlackBerries, just smartphones in general. It's really gaining a lot of strength, and we're really as the learning development organization, we're finding ourselves really needing to respond to those demands. So you can see here, 91% of America, in January 2014, so a very recent survey here, numbers that represent 91% of folks still using cell phones out there, and that's still being the predominant piece. But again, we're continuing to see more and more of the multi-device piece. You know, in addition to cell phones, people interacting with a number of different devices, as the numbers in our initial poll indicated. So of course, smartphones, you know, very much a big piece of that, and growing. I'd say, I would hazard to say, surging. And then of course, tablets are a very important piece of that, and certainly in terms of learning, you know, as well as just general entertainment. People really accessing multiple. Now here's a very interesting percentage here that folks, only 25% use only mobile to access the internet. That's one of the key drivers, you know, again, and that number continues to creep up, where folks that really need information quickly, you know, just in time, and using mobile primarily to access the internet, as opposed to from traditional, you know, from desktop and whatnot. So what really drives choice? And you know, what we're seeing is context very much drives choice. This is from a Google.com that really covers this particular thought process and concept very closely, very well rather. And it really is driven around the amount of time we have or need. You know, what is our goal? So it's really all about what we're seeing is at a particular time. It's often driven by, you know, what we have going on our day. What do we want to accomplish? Where are we? Our attitude, state of mind. You know, all of those things go into how we utilize multi-devices. And you know, another really interesting dynamic that we're seeing is the idea of sequential screening. Like, in other words, going from multiple screens. I'm sure a lot of folks that are on the webinar today are, well, 90% of us out there are using multiple screens sequentially, where you've got your probably maybe a tablet, maybe even desktop, maybe even all three. But virtually all of us, 98%, are moving between multiple devices in the same day. Very common. It's really just becoming the reality of how we operate today, quite simply. So a couple of interesting quotes from Eric Schmidt at Google. As you can see, it looks like the majority of enterprise commuting is being done on mobile devices, in particular on tablets. And the ubiquitousness is, as I can't stress that strongly enough, that organizations, how much their people are using mobile, how quickly they need information, and certainly a lot of the learning and computing, as Eric Schmidt talked about there, is being done on tablets. And then another quote from Jeffrey Bean, day by day, number of devices, platforms, and browsers that need to work with your site grows. So, I mean, it's not only multi-device, of course. When you have multi-device, you have multi-browser. So redesign represents a really strong fundamental shift in how we build websites. And that continues to evolve. Some companies are responding more quickly than others in terms of how they configure their websites. But again, this is a trend that's not going away. So what is responsive in particular? Responsive e-learning in its simplest terms is really e-learning that responds to device size. E-learning, if you think about it, it just responds to device dimensions. You may have heard the term adaptive learning. You know, the key difference here is responsive learning really refers to fluid layouts that sense the size of the device window it is opening on regularly. So you'll hear about, you know, fixed layout. It senses the device, size, and adjust dynamically in its most simplest terms. There's actually an app, a website that really does a nice job of clarifying the difference between adaptive, responsive, and even static. It's I'll share it a little bit later once I hand off with Amit. It's called Liquid Apsive, Liquida, P as in Paul, S-I-V as in Victor, E. There's a really clear, precise definition that applies to very much as well. So just some questions to think about, and certainly respond to on chat if you feel so moved. Are you already building responsive e-learning? Are you planning to, or would you like to? You really feel, in terms of with your organization and how you're thinking about this, is this where the industry is going? So e-learning, that again, we've talked a lot about how we're talking today about responding to device size, and what is responsive e-learning. Again, it's really all about doing the design once, and then having it adapt to, whether it be certainly desktop, but more so today, smartphones, BYOD, tablets, whatever it might be, so that the design, it's a very efficient way of e-learning, and then having it adapt, but not just adapt, but adapt dynamically, so that it engages the learning. It's a great learning experience, and it looks good aesthetically as well as in terms of learning or getting the performance support insights that you're looking for. So some more questions to ponder. For what kind of e-learning might you use a responsive approach? Give that some thought in terms of your own situation. How might you apply this the concept of responsive? And do you think a responsive design would make it better? Would it elevate the particular experience that you have in mind for your organization? So why responsive e-learning? Why is this important? In our particular experience, we're seeing an enhanced reach, a higher uptake, higher adoption out there. That it's really a demand. It's higher uptake is not even strong enough. Folks that obviously it has to be a great experience. It has to be dynamic. Has to be when they need it. But really a great high level of adoption that we're seeing out there. As I mentioned earlier, the single source. It's done once, and is adaptive, is responsive to all devices, and this is really one of the big keys. Obviously, you don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel and do a lot of tweaking, which is of course cost effective, easy maintenance, and this is really a big deal in terms of you're not having to put a lot of time into this. And then of course the consistency of the content, that it is dynamic, that it looks good in virtually any device, and that folks are getting a great, they're getting what they need when they need it, and obviously that's going to drive more success for the organization. It's going to drive performance, and of course the ability to track across devices. BYOD is not going away. We're going to have to continue to respond to this. Organizations are demanding this certainly of us And again, it's just something that we're going to continue to have to address. Responsive is a great answer to that. And of course, the ability sequencing, going between devices, the ability to bookmark and to go to a different device and to be able to pick that up and go, and not have it go back or anything like that. So the ability from a sequencing perspective to move between devices and not lose any ground. So let's talk about a little bit about our journey so far. As some out there may have heard, we have a proprietary framework called we have dubbed FRED, and that stands for Framework for Responsive eLearning Development. So some of the advantages of FRED, and we've covered some of this not directly attributed to FRED, certainly within the responsive framework. But the reason that Upside Learning was pushed to develop FRED were to respond and provide that consistent and complete user experience, regardless of device, regardless of where you are, regardless of what you have going on. The ability to plug in and get some nice looking learning or performance support that's going to give you, feed you in terms of information or what you might need in terms of performing your duties right when you need it, just when you need it, and right on time. So efficiency, the ability to have design that's done once, basically, and works across all devices. The efficiencies that creates, the amount of time that gives individuals that are involved in these areas some more of their life back. So those efficiencies are very, very important to organizations out there that we are talking with. The ability to customize, and folks don't typically, off the shelf is very nice. It has its place, but the ability to customize very, very specifically in terms of design development, organizations want that kind of, the ability to really bring that kind of learning and engagement to their people. Reliability, it has to work. You need it, where you need it, and of course be right on time. So it has to, the ability to, we get into push notification, different kinds of performance support pieces. Very, very critical that the reliability be very strong. Effective content management, the ability to repurpose your content and use that again across multiple devices, and the ability to make this a strong experience, as well as from the folks that develop content, just makes their lives a lot easier. And then, of course, cost effectiveness. You do it only once, and once it's created, the ability to repurpose it and push it across all devices. And this has become a really key need and benefit of organizations that we're implementing FRED with. So let's take a quick look at the key features. Multi-device support. It certainly supports HTML4 and HTML5, and this is the mix is largely to support all sorts of browsers that are available today. Most responsive e-learning, as I think I mentioned earlier, is being developed for desktops with tablets and smartphones as secondary devices, but we certainly need to be able to respond to that. So the multi-delivery options, of course, supporting both online and offline delivery. Multimedia support, as you can see here, supporting audio, video, certainly SVG, and just the ability to, of course, you can see Sprite there as well. So there's a multitude of different areas there that need to be considered. And this, again, is just a big part of our journey, and this is where all of this comes from, certainly. responsive menu, the ability to navigate and adapt a platform, device, browser, a lot of important alignment pieces here. Platform-specific features that don't need to be all enabled at once. Some folks say they kind of do a toe in the water, so you can disable some of these features, but it enables the ability to control that, either auto-enable, as you can see, or disabled. Social media integration, easily configured to include, in every organization has a different take on how much of this they want to get into, but it's nice to know that it's available. As you can see here, Facebook, Twitter share, and the ability to be able to connect the device in this regard and have that kind of line of sight. And then, as you can see, template library, we have at least 20 easily customizable templates that make it easy to plug in and get started with responsive learning. We'll continue to develop those. It's nice that this is a proprietary system as we continue to develop additional templates as the demands of the market indicate, and certainly all customizable, and certainly quizzes, knowledge learning, things of that nature that are part of those templates as well. And multilingual support, even including double byte character sets and right to left languages, which again, demands of the market will continue to require us to add more to that, and that's something that we can do very readily. Learning standards compliance, of course, very, very important. As you can see, SCORM 1.2, SCORM 2004 AICC, and Tin Can API at any particular time. And of course, developer aids, the ability to debug output, system logs, things of that nature, configuration windows, however you may need to tweak this at particular time. The ability to get in there and do that without, again, having to redesign an entire course, but there's times that you'll need to get in there and do some things in that regard. And then, of course, accessibility support, web contents, accessibility guidelines, 508 compliance, and these are obviously very important to organizations. You have to cover all the bases in terms of the development is nice, but the accessibility support and being able to manage that piece is important as well. So with that, I'll hand it off to Amit. I'll let you take it from here, and I'll jump in as need be.
Thank you, Jim. Jim, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, good. So I assume everybody else can too. So thank you, Jim, for the right context on responsive e-learning, and also a kind of a presentation on our framework, FRED. And just to take up a question which was there by a gentleman called Tim, is he was asking how I think you in between talked about today mobile or multi-device learning still being looked at as an extension to desktop-based learning, and his question is primarily how does this fit into the increasing theme around mobile first. So I think kind of, I mean, there's no answer to that. It's kind of an observation which I agree with. In fact, as the world becomes more towards mobile first development strategy in not just e-learning but everything else, I think it is just about inevitable that whatever we design has to be multi-device. Of course, today, from what we have spoken with other people at our events and other customers and in our sales meetings, what we see is, a lot of companies are still looking at it as an extension to what they already have. Their first job is to, I have a lot of training material. How can I also extend this and make it available to mobile devices as well? But this is going to change, if not soon, but gradually enough, that with mobile first coming in as a strategy for computing, for development, for technical things, and even for learning and training, I think responsive e-learning actually will become the cornerstone of all these activities. And that is when this discussion will have more relevance, because there is no escaping mobile learning or multi-device learning at that point in time. Yes, but yes, today it is still seen as an extension to the primary e-learning which we have been used to on desktops and laptops. Now, having said that, I would cover the kind of key challenges and considerations we as a team have faced and seen and addressed over the last 3-4 years when we've been developing mobile learning, and of course now also developing responsive e-learning to a large extent. And so what I will do is we have grouped them under various sections, 4 to be precise. First one being browser OS device combinations, the other one being usability, the third being content display and treatment, and the last but not the least being development process. Now all these things we will discuss in the later part of the webinar, they have come about as an experience we've had over the years from developing responsive e-learning. And also all of these factors, they kind of span across multiple, I would say, skill sets like instructional design, graphics design, programming to some extent, then QA and testing. How do you test these things once you develop responsive e-learning? And of course, in the last step, the overall process, is the process we use to develop this kind of learning different from what we use to develop typical e-learning or web-based e-learning or desktop-based e-learning. So we'll cover those in detail. And also from time to time, for some slides, I might refer back to the framework Jim mentioned about FRED and how we have addressed those challenges in that framework to make it easy and also cost effective for us to produce responsive e-learning for our customers. But the first kind of a challenge, and of course a big factor in responsive e-learning, is the sheer number of combinations available today for device, the OS, and the browser. So today we have so many devices, the hardware devices, the real devices, and they run a gamut of operating platforms, Android, various versions of Android, and then iOS, BlackBerry, Windows, and other mutations of these platforms. And then on the top of that, most of these devices and OS combinations also run a lot of browsers. So while a Windows device may come ready with an IE for mobile, Android may prefer Google Chrome, but they also run multiple other browsers. So you may find Google Chrome available for multiple platforms. So the user has a choice to use a variety of such combinations to access the e-learning. So the target set or the target device combination is pretty huge, which just the number of those combinations make it a big challenge, both at the technical level, because responsive e-learning is finally all about adapting to the screen sizes or resolutions of various devices, and they differ. So right from a small smartphone to a tablet, and then in between a phablet and a bigger phone and a small tablet, I think we have a huge number of combinations available. So yeah, I think the basic premise of responsive e-learning is to be able to make it work on every possible device. That is the basic premise, and which is fair, and I think it's a justified objective. But it may not be feasible or practical either in the context of budget or the cost or the time it might take to develop such a package. I think so. The first thing we do, or we kind of try to do, is to narrow the scope down in terms of the combination of browser, OS, and the device to a number which is feasible, practical, and also represents truly the target set in the user base. So it could be, you could go by, let's say, 99% of the devices you want to cover. So if it is BYOD kind of a company, you might want to cover, let's say only Android and iPhone, or only Android and BlackBerry, depending on which is what is being used mostly in your company. And then the second, factor is, of course, this is where the real technical stuff starts coming in, is how to display the learning content in the same or similar manner and achieve the same behavior. Because while technically you might be able to create multiple packages which can run on multiple devices, but I think the key here is to create a single package which can run on multiple devices, yet what you are delivering through that content package is same on any device. So if I'm using a smartphone or a tablet or a desktop, and also if I'm actually sequencing through these devices for the same e-learning material, we need to be sure that the output is consistent and it does not lose any information or meaning for the learning value we need to deliver. So there are a few things we kind of take care of. One is the first step in doing that is detection of which browser, OS and device a user is actually accessing the e-learning from. And so this particular statement here, know every individual agent string, it's a kind of a technical thing. This is what the coders use to identify, if the user is accessing an e-learning package, they can identify from this string is what device they're on, what browser they're using, what version of the browser they're using, and what other factors they need to consider they can get from this information string. And then from this information, they can use that information to configure and code differently for different browsers. So because while you would use typically HTML4 and HTML5 and a combination of that to create responsive e-learning, but browsers, they do not have a standardized way to interpret every such HTML4 or HTML5 code. So they behave differently for different code. For an example, if you were to display a box somewhere on your e-learning package for some purpose, just the way different browsers would need to be, they need to be given that information is different. So if you look at Safari and Chrome, so what you say to Safari and Chrome is different from what you say to Mozilla and others. So this string can give you information which you can use to conditionally code for each browser if you wish to target so many browser and device combinations. And once you have done that, once you have started doing that, once you have set up the configuration for each browser combination you wish to target, I think the second key part is how do you really test that? Because of the number of combinations you're targeting is large, I think the testing not only takes longer, which is logical, but it becomes all the more complex and intricate, so many combinations, so many devices, and it also becomes costlier because of the time it will take to test, plus you will actually have to test on actual devices. So that is what we recommend, and that's what we really want to do is, while the simulators which we have from each of these platform makers who give simulators for testing, they're reasonably helpful. But I think we have observed and consistently observed that when it comes to actual devices, things sometimes behave differently. So to ensure that what you're delivering is correct and it's valid, we need to test on actual devices. So that's a key factor in creating responsive learning, is to actually test on either a large set of your target devices or all the devices if that is feasible. Now, the most, I think, difficult part in this whole combination set is the browser version, and specifically we face more problems with IE or Internet Explorer, because one, it has multiple versions running at the same time in the market. So you have IE 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and though IE 6 would be phased out sometime in this year, hopefully soon, and the use of IE 7 and IE 8 is also declining, but they are still there and they are still being used because if you create something for multiple devices and one of the devices is a desktop and it is using IE 8, you have to be careful because IE 8 does not support HTML5. So that is why, if you remember, our framework which we have produced is an HTML4 and a 5 combination, because we target almost all versions and lower versions also, even for IE. So we have to craftily use HTML4 and HTML5. So depending on which browser we are targeting or we will run on, we can use the right code for that browser. So the key takeaway is to use both HTML4 and HTML5 if IE is a part of your target 7, which in most cases it would be, especially if it is 8 or 7 or 6. And I think a good way to kind of handle that is perspective is to have a system check in the eLearning package. For example, when the package runs on a device or a phone or a tablet or a desktop, the first thing it does is runs a system check of browser, operating system, resolution, any plugins required to run the package. And depending on the outcome of that, you can either decide to halt the process, okay, you cannot run this package on this device because of this critical gap, or you could give a warning saying, because your machine does not have this capability, some of the activities in the eLearning package may not work as suggested. So, so you could choose to either just stop it there or just move forward with some kind of warning to the user. And I think while an easy way out, some people think is, okay, let's not even use HTML5. If it is not something there on IE8 or 7, or it is a problem with some of the browsers, let us not use it at all, which is fine. I think you could produce good stuff using HTML4 also, but HTML5 has a lot of capabilities which we could leverage. So even though you are using HTML4 primarily, I think it is a good case to use HTML5 also for at least the browsers which support that. So if, let's say, a part of your target user segment does use browsers which support HTML5, we should leverage that. Just an example, one of our templates in Fred or the framework is, if you look at the right hand side of this example, it's a two-dimensional single layer kind of a carousel view, and because the browser which is running it does not support HTML5, the template reverts to HTML4 code, and it just gives you a very plain view with the next and previous button. So you have to just carouse through, by clicking the buttons. But the template also understands that if it finds a browser which supports HTML5, if you look at the left hand side, it leverages the HTML5 capabilities, and then if you see, it gives you a very visually compelling view of the carousel or the activities in that page or the frame. So you actually could see the next and the previous, and it gives you that depth in that carousel, which is, I think it makes a very compelling view to that particular activity. So that's where I think we have to be careful and smart in mixing both 4 and 5, HTML5 and 4 HTML4, to ensure that wherever possible we leverage HTML5 capabilities for the browsers it supports. And then of course, we will not, we don't really do it enough. It's like test on actual devices. So that's a very, very key part, and that's why we keep repeating that now and then, is whatever we produce, we have to test it on the real or actual physical devices with the combinations we want to target. So if it's a BlackBerry, it's a Z10, it's an iPhone 4S, 5S, it's a Galaxy series phone or a Windows phone or Nokia, Lumia, Icon, or whatever phone, we have to have those devices to test that. And this is what we have done for our framework. So all the templates we have produced, all those have been tested on multiple devices with multiple combinations, because to be able to get the real benefit from the templates, we have to ensure that they are running well on all the devices. I think the next big consideration, and also of course a challenge in the same tone, is the use of videos and audios, and typically the formats supported by various browsers. So what we have found out and observed and we have learned is that if on the video side we use MP4 and OGV format, and on the audio side we use MP3 and OGG format, I think these two combinations or options per video and per audio, they're able to cover a huge number of combinations. So if all the videos could be in MP4 and or OGV, and same for the audio for different formats, I think we can cover a big number of combinations. So depending on the browser which is running on, the package can default to either MP4 or OGV, and same for audio formats. Of course, the only, I wouldn't say the downside, but only effect of that is that you may have to store a duplicate of each video and audio in that package, which is not a big problem today. Storage is not really expensive, but sometimes some customers have an LMS engagement which either has low storage given to them, or it is costly to have more storage. So just in case you're using, and if the e-learning is actually heavy on video and audio, you might see suddenly your package really becoming heavy in storage size, demanding. So, but yes, these are the two formats which we have found. They kind of are universal and they can cover almost all the combinations we need to target these days. The next set of challenges and considerations relate to the usability of the overall output. We have seen the browser and the OS and the device combinations. And before I kind of look at usability, I just want to, have a check with Jim, and in terms of, Jim, you've been meeting so many people. You meet a lot of people in sales meetings or at events we conduct and various other activities we do. Any thoughts you want to share about the first, the kind of, questions people have in their mind and how they relate to, how that or those questions relate to the sheer number of devices and OS and platform we have today in the industry?
Yeah, thank you, Amit. It's interesting that beyond the surface of it, we as we started having a lot more of these kinds of conversations, and the frequency of that continues to build, that a lot of the questions were around of course, iOS, iPads, and iPhones, and that type of thing. But that's kind of actually more so what we anticipated. But so we certainly have had those kinds of questions. But the number of different kinds of devices has we were aware of that, but we've been surprised that the variety is such that there's certainly Android, but BlackBerry, and actually some variations we weren't sure that we'd heard of, but the ability to support that. And so the primary ones that a lot of us know, of course, is iOS, but we have global clients, folks outside North America certainly, that there's still a lot of BlackBerry use. And so we've continued to need to support that, and just the ability to really have an experience that's engaging. And the feedback that we've gotten a lot of is that they're surprised at the how dynamic it can be, how responsive it can be, and that the ability to go between devices and things of that nature. That's really driven a lot more, I believe, excitement and interest in responsive.
I think just to add to what you said, it is kind of further given a little bit of complexity by the fact that BYOD, bring your own device, is now kind of a norm, not even an exception in the companies today. So though we have seen a few companies who have prescribed let's say an iPad as a tablet of preference and choice and to be used for training, but I think the more and more companies have adopted and accepted the BYOD thing. And so because there's no control on the devices being brought to the office environment or being used for office and other purpose, I think the sheer number of combinations would definitely be very, very high. But it's not a big challenge as long as we can understand how to cater to that. And I'm sure there are people who understand that, like our team does. So I think that's not really a big challenge. So moving on to the usability section, I think given that the phones and tablets are primarily touch screens, phones and devices, I think the first factor is the touch friendliness of the e-learning content we are developing. And so we have to take care of that, and one of the ways to do that is incorporating the gestures we normally use on a smart device or a tablet or a phone, to incorporate one or two or more of them in the e-learning course at appropriate places. And also other is to be able to understand that all the interactivities we have to build into the e-learning package would need to be large enough so that they are comfortably viewed on device of small and big sizes, and especially for tablets and phones, they need to be far apart, comfortably so that users can tap on those interactivities without mixing and touching the other interactivities by mistake. And by gestural navigation, we are referring to the possibility of, let's say, how to use swipe in an e-learning course. So you could use swipe feature for page navigation between each page, or for example, in the example given on this slide here, there's a scenario of about 10 frames, and I could develop the package in a way where I could use swipe to navigate between the frames of the scenario. So in case we need to do that, then we may have to differentiate between the swipe we use for scenario navigation, maybe a single finger swipe in that context, and a 2-finger swipe for a page navigation, so that they don't conflict with each other. But I think it is important that whatever we deliver on the tablets and the smartphones, they have that primary basic user interface or expectations they have in terms of touch and gestural navigations. You could also be more creative in using pinch and zoom, 4-finger swipe, multi-finger gestures. I think more the better, but yes, it has to be balanced by the need of that gesture on that interactivity or on that package. And of course, layout is also a big factor in terms of how you have the layout design. So in this example here, this is a small interactivity, drag and drop. So if you look at the left-hand side, this actually would work well on a desktop or a laptop, where I can just drag easily with my mouse, which is a pointed cursor, and put them into the drop areas. And if you look at the example, the number of drag items are actually a little high number. But if I use the same layout on a mobile or a tablet device, it won't really work well because of the closeness of the drag items. So the layout has to be changed and modified accordingly depending on which screen size it is and which device it is going on. So you may have to increase more space between the drag items, or they may have to be arranged separately. They may have to become maybe more bigger and maybe more square than rectangle. So all of these things could be considered while creating such elements. And the third part is the menu or the navigation, the global navigation, because typically e-learning packages, they come with their own menu bar in the bottom of the page or sometimes top of the page, which has next, previous, glossary, transcript, menu, TOC, progress bar, audio, video controls. So so as you shift from device to device, you may have to look at either removing some items which may not be required. For example, if I'm viewing a video on my smartphone, I need not have any control on the video for volume. It is enough because I use my device menu or volume controls. So you could actually leverage that and select only the required elements in the menu, and you can group items, you can create multiple layers of menu, and the menu also becomes responsive in that sense. So so as you move from device to device, the menu will change its location, will change the form, it might become multi-layered, and it may be grouped into more elements. So that would be a factor there. And this is just an example of if you look at from the big to the small screen, how the images change, how the images actually disappear in the last, which is the smallest font size, which is the next part I will be covering, is how do you use images in multiple device e-learning. Again, examples of menus being grouped and layered and become responsive. The other item in usability is how do you write instructions for interactivities. There are 3 options available. One is to write them in a device neutral or device agnostic manner. So you just say, instead of saying click or tap, you can just say, you could use terms which do not really refer to a term used more for one of the devices. You could use device appropriate things. So if it is displayed on a smartphone or tablet, you can say tap, and if it is displayed on a web desktop or a laptop, you could say click. So you could use appropriate as per the device, or you could use a task specific terminology. For example, here I'm not saying click on the play icon or tap on the play icon. I'm just saying watch the video to learn about this thing. So I'm just giving action which is more generic, and the user, we assume, would be able to understand that by tapping or clicking the play icon, the video will play, which is very task specific. The other part is the text size, the readability, the accessibility of the text on the devices. So there are certain size, a common size if it works on all devices could be good. We have found 16 pixel to be roughly a good size which works on most of the devices. But I think it is good to be able to have a specific size for each device or combination if it is appropriate. And also, it is also good to have accessibility settings within the eLearning package. For example, here if you see, the eLearning course itself has its own settings of accessibility for text size, color, and background. So you could introduce them so that users may choose their own settings to feel more comfortable with the view and the interface. The next part is content display. How do you display the content on multiple devices and screen sizes, yet the challenges would be that the meaning of information or kind of learning value, you have to still achieve a look and feel which is consistent, because of the if you have users sequencing between various devices, the look and feel has to be consistent. If it should not feel suddenly that it is something new which I'm doing right now. And we have to be able to leverage the device's capabilities to deliver a very user-friendly experience. So using gestural navigation, making the menus responsive, and giving focus to the text size and accessibility. The experience of the users have to be very, very friendly with the output on any device. For example, what may be a horizontal flow chart on a desktop could actually become a vertical flow chart on a mobile phone or a tablet. Of how you could convert the layout or transform the content from one way to other to accommodate screen sizes. Another example, if you see, the labels have become a little more vertical than they were earlier, and the image has also scaled to a size fit for the mobile devices. Again, some examples of images being either small, they have scaled down, or they've been not used in some device sizes. An example of how to treat interactivities or assessments or quiz elements. So as I was just saying, images are typically either scaled up and down to accommodate to the screen size. They could also be a possibility we actually keep pre-cropped versions of images. So one pre-cropped version for, let's say, tablets, one for mobile phones. So depending on where we are rendering the output, we could use those pre-cropped versions, and we can even scale them for a range of device size. So let's say from a small phone to a phablet, we can use one version, scale them up and down, and same way other images. In terms of animations, what we do is we code animations in Flash, and then we publish them as videos within the pages or the templates we have in our framework. So that way, we kind of restrict the treatment of animations to some extent, but we can also leverage that the video actually can play as a video on a smartphone using the device player, and it could still give the right meaning to the user. So if you see here, on the desktop, what could play as a video within the page would actually play as a separate video in the iPhone or the small phone, and it could then, between these two sizes, you could mix and match how you want to render that. Same for audio. The factors would be, if there's a narration in the background, if it's introductory audio, or if it is a audio within the video, so it could be a closely synced audio in the animation. So again, these are the factors we have to look at for audio strategy. And we discussed the multimedia components, audio, video. So depending on the browser being used, you could use sprite animations or SVG graphics or animations. So again, our templates, we accommodate all of these things. And so templates, depending on the browser they would be running on, they will be able to adjust to that. So the last part is, just a few questions to leave for you is, while mobile first strategy will become prevalent and it might become the starting point for every activity, and while responsive e-learning is definitely the way out, I think we have to still consider some questions as in, should these be shown at all on smaller devices? Things like application simulations or complex technical diagrams, stories and scenarios which need to see a lot of details of environment or objects. And let's say there's a lot of text within some animation or scenario, and also some interactivity which you require user to explore or navigate on their own and identify areas. Should these, would these actually be relevant for a small device size? Would they actually justify the purpose, or will they have the same meaning retained on smaller devices? So these are some of the factors, because we can't blindly convert everything to everything. So I think it has to be balanced between the objective and the technical feasibility and the practical usefulness of that conversion or that creation of e-learning for multiple devices. So last, I think we are running out of time, just about running out of time. So I'll just quickly go through the process. So the process we have for creating responsive e-learning, I think it is a very iterative process as compared to what we typically do in web-based e-learning these days. Because I think the first part of the process, where we have to first figure out the device, OS and browser combinations, and the impact of that combination target set on the design, maybe the budget, maybe the process, maybe the time. I think that is a very iterative process with the customer, because if you have 10 combinations, if you have 20 combinations, they will kind of determine the cost and the time we will need to produce that. And also because there is a tight linking between the graphical interface and the technical and the whole approach of learning design. I think the interdependence between various teams, especially instructional design and graphics design, it is higher than we tend to see in the e-learning development, where the IDs can create storyboard, give it to the developers and designers, and they can take it from there. I think it is within them also, it's a very iterative process. So what we do is we keep the focus of storyboard on the core content and visuals, and then from there on we iterate and we create versions of that for multiple devices. And I think the bigger factor is that it is the testing time is required for this is pretty much higher than anything else we do for e-learning development. So number of combinations, devices, simulations, I think the testing time is really high. So these are the key differences in the process we use. Either even if we are using Thread or we are using a customized framework for our customers, I think the process is similar in most of the cases. So I think with that and just about finishing in time, I would like to thank everybody to be part of our webinar today. And we've seen a lot of questions on the questions area, and what we'll do is we'll take out these questions and we will publish either on email or on website. We'll publish with the archive. We'll publish answers to some of the common ones and some of the ones which we haven't answered in the webinar today. And Jim, before I close, anything you want to share as a closing comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate and thank everyone for their time and for joining us today. And this is a very very hot topic and something that is very much resonating with a lot of organizations out there. So please feel free to reach out to us. Just for anyone that might be in the Washington, D.C. area, we're going to be actually at the ASTD ICE conference in Washington, D.C. The 5th through the 7th of May. So come see us. We're booth 341. We'll be happy to spend some time and talk about responsive learning or anything else. Demos, all of that. So thanks very much.
Great. Great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Have a good day, all of you. So we will be closing the webinar now, and the recording to the webinar would be up on a website shortly after. You have to go to the section of resources, and there you'll see archive of a webinar, and you'll see the full recording there. So again, thanks everyone, and have a good day.